Baja California. 28,000 square miles of pure desert beauty. And nowhere more beautiful than here, in the mountains near Loreto. And one of the best ways to discover that beauty is with saddling south. A trail riding experience that exposes you to Baja's secrets the way Californios have been doing it for hundreds of years. From atop a mule.
When I first rode a mule in this mountain range called the Sierra de la Giganta, that really opened up a new world for me. I had been kayaking on the coastline here for probably 15 years, but when I got on a mule and started getting into the backcountry, I loved riding out here in the desert where there were no fences for miles and miles and miles. You could just ride for days without ever seeing a barbed wire fence.
And that's something you'll still experience here. No fences. We arrived at a small ranch in the mountains near San Javier a little early and got a look at the mules that would be ours for the ride. Before long, Trudi arrived with her dog. She introduced us to Che, the owner of the ranch and her partner on this trek, and paired us up with our mules, telling us a few stories about them, including Compadre, who's a celebrity of sorts here in Baja.
El Compadre is a famous mule. He hiked all the way from San Jose del Cabo to Tecate, up the peninsula, 108 riding days.
Before long, we were heading off with Compadre into some of the most eye-popping desert scenery you can imagine.
I've been hit by a tidal wave.
The terrain here is rough and unforgiving, and that's just what these mules are built for. At Saddling South, they use mules rather than horses. Travel by mule has a long history here in Baja because honestly, the terrain is not perfect for horses, especially when you're crossing a desert like this. So, yeah, crossing the desert on a mule is a lot more authentic experience to Baja.
What's really wonderful about being able to share this ranch lifestyle is it is the roots of Baja California. It's the roots of the history. We're riding through what was the original California. Isolated communities up here in the mountains that have still kept the old traditions. And so you visit a ranch like Che Martinez's ranch or here at Rancho Viejo, and you're still seeing a part of old California culture.
One of the two ranches we visited was this goat farm that uses a traditional method to produce artisan cheese, and the other ranch kept the mules. Both sit on historic ground.
So the first mission building was built just over here a few hundred yards, and it was of adobe. But because they were at the upper end of the watershed here that goes out to the Pacific, the western watershed, the water didn't last as long. They had to move the original mission site called San Javier from this area just about 9 kilometers down canyon to where there was a more solid water supply there.
We made our way along the trail, passing the flora and the fauna of a surprisingly vibrant ecosystem. You know, driving up here, we saw several cows and bulls that seemed to be just free-ranging off into the desert, and I wondered, what are they feeding on here? There's no grassland. You know, up in California, we are used to cows feeding on the grasslands. When the terrain looks like this, it's hard to imagine anything surviving out here. But Trudi is a living encyclopedia on the local plant life. And part of the experience of this ride is stopping along the way to learn about this desert ecosystem in one of the world's largest classrooms.
So, Palo Verde is in bloom right now with these yellow flowers, and there are about 3 different species of the Palo Verde that we'll see today.
After an hour or so, we arrived at one of the precious sources of life for this ecosystem in the form of an actual oasis in the desert that, although small, was as beautiful as you could imagine.
That is gorgeous.
It attracts animals big and small from the area, and I wasn't sure if these goats were wild or not. Trudi describes how important these water sources are to the local vaqueros as well.
They know where the water sources are. They'll run out to those areas, maybe make a little campfire, make their cup of coffee over the coals of the campfire. The old cowboys here really prefer, when they go out riding across country and up to the tops of the mesas and go out looking for their cattle, they only take with them for 2 or 3 days as they're going out on their roundups just what they need in their built-in saddlebags on the old traditional saddle and their bedroll strapped onto the back. That's a wonderful style of riding to take people on the longer tours that we do, where we go off with those cowboys who've lived here all their lives, able to take us to the secret water holes and the oases and the running rivers that are flowing in some of these canyons. Then you get to see all of the richness in the landscape around this area.
Riding off into the mountains of Baja for a week, or even just a few hours, is the kind of experience one never forgets.